Good morning, Jeff Saturday. How you doing?
Morning. How you doing?
Look, finally, that looked like a football team yesterday, right?
Man, I guess everybody got a turn at running game. I'm not sure they're trying to make it all up in 1 week or what, you know?
Jeff, what were your thoughts on the offensive line? I thought one of the keys yesterday was finally having the same starting offensive line for a second straight week, which for most teams might be something that happens every week, but for the Colts, it was only the second time all year they've had that.
No, listen, that's huge. Anytime you can get consistency in your front five, you'd like that to happen, like you said, weekly. But even if it's a one-piece move, occasionally you can usually overcome those. But with the Colts, man, I mean, you've been moving guys, tackle, guards, moving them all around, and just trying to find a good pattern. And so, like you said, I think consistency definitely helped. I think once you get going, I mean, I think offensive line play is one of those positions. Momentum matters, and when you start to get a roll, you feel what the defense is doing. Hey, I'm going to crash down on this 3 technique, which is the guy usually over the guard, and we can start moving this, and you start to get a feel for what the defense is doing, and you could tell, the Colts O-line had their number early and often, and absolutely got after it. I mean, that is a win you're going to go home, hang your hat on, and hopefully continue to build. Hey, this is going to be the strength of our football team for the next quite a few years. So let's start looking at ourselves this way, and it can really redefine your identity. So it was fun. And again, I'm not trying to make too much of beating the Bills. I'm just saying from the offensive line perspective, having that mentality of what you want to be about.
Jeff, do us a favor, because we all saw that whatever the Colts were doing was working last night. Take us inside football a little bit. Why was the offensive line so successful yesterday? What did they do so well?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't think you can say, one thing in particular. I think it's one of those things that once you start getting reads, right? Hey, linebacker stances. So I'll take you from a play from the center. You walk to the line of scrimmage, and you see that there's a tight nose to the center, and we call that a tight shade. And then you got a 3 technique that may be a little bit wider. And so now the call between the guard and the tackle, which again goes back to consistency of having the same guys beside you, you see it the same way. Oh, we're going to double down across the ball. We're going to run a quick power here, so we're going to double down and get somebody across the ball. Center's going to have an easy block. We'll turn him backwards. We'll get a guy leading in the hole. All of those conversations can happen, and you begin to see it. And then you see, okay, by the linebacker's alignment, I got a great angle. So now I'm going to man call it. I'll let the guard take him by himself, and I'll get up to the next level. So there's a lot of little different intricacies of offensive line play that when you begin to play together, those calls aren't necessary, right? You think it together. When a guy walks up, we all see it the same way. We've talked about it leading up to it in the week. And then again, rarely do you have games like this in the NFL, man, where, literally you try to get all your rushing yards back in a week, which is pretty awesome. But once it starts going, man, it's exciting for the offensive line. I don't care who you're playing. I don't care what your record is, man. You get fired up on days like that.
Jeff, we saw Marlon Mack over 100 yards, just the 4th time in Andrew Luck's career that he's had a 100-yard rusher in a game. Your thoughts on Mack and maybe some of the growth we are starting to see? Of course, injuries have plagued him definitely early in this 2018 season, but do you look at him as a guy that can be maybe your lead runner of this running back by committee approach Frank Reich wants to have?
Heck yeah, I think you see him that way. And to your point, the injuries definitely, definitely hurt you. And again, this is no different than a quarterback and a receiver. We always talk about the rhythm between those two positions, right? Oh, he sees the coverage the same way, right? He's throwing that route before he comes out of his break. He's throwing them open. You hear the way people describe, receiver and quarterbacks. Well, there's no difference in Mack and the offensive line. We talked about their consistency, right? Is it all of a sudden all 5 guys can see it the same way? That type of running back by committee, there still has to be one guy that you or a guy that you say, hey, this is going to be our first guy that we really get most of the cuts with, most of the reps with, right? So that all of a sudden he sees that the same way, because there's a mesh point when he gets the ball and he's going to go approach the line of scrimmage. There's an insertion point in the line of scrimmage that we all know, right? We call it leverage point. We're going to leverage the 3-hole, or we're going to leverage the 5-hole, however we look at it. So we're blocking to get him to that point. And so when he sees whichever player that we're keying off of, whether it be a down lineman or a linebacker, and how we're going to go get them, all of a sudden those runs that start off the game at 1 and 2 yards bust into 5 and 6 yards, and then ultimately the big ones that you spring, the 20-plussers that we call those game changers, right? You get 3 or 4 in the game of those, no matter who your back is. It's redefining games, and so I definitely think, but the injury thing, we got it. That thing can't keep coming back. That's one of those things that can really derail anybody's growth, and especially it'll hinder an offensive line, a young offensive line, because you begin to miss trying to overdo it instead of allowing that back to do his work.
The Raiders coming up next week. How likely is it now that the Colts could be favored in that game even?
Oh, I think, I definitely think there's a strong possibility. I mean, you look at the Raiders team, and I think, especially with the way Luck played, I mean, I know he didn't have a big yardage numbers, but played well. Offensive line played well. And the Raiders are struggling to find an identity. I think they'll come in and try to get Lynch going, try to get Carr, back on track and attack it that way. But the reality is that the way the Colts played today, it will probably be either a close line or in favor of the Colts.
As you reflect on them and look at them in the overall picture of things in the AFC South, just a couple of games back right now, how likely is it they could jump back into this race, do you think?
Well, it's like a race that nobody wants to win.
Here, Vrabel said yesterday, no, you take it.
So, yeah, I definitely think they're capable. I mean, there's not a – I would have told you I'm shocked. I'm literally shocked at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Never thought they would be where they are right now. I thought Tennessee made a bad – I love Mike Vrabel. I think he made an error in judgment on the field goal. I mean, on the extra point.
How is that different from the Colts the Colts when they went for it on 4th down a few weeks ago?
Well, the team you're playing and the rhythm of the game. I mean, look, their offensive line was dominating that game in the second half. They're running all over, and if you're going to go for it, right? If you decide, hey, I'm gonna do this, that you're at the 1 yard line. You got Marcus Mariota, who's a huge human being. You got Derrick Henry, who's huge, and you decide to throw it twice. I just don't understand. I don't understand the concept of because you had all the momentum. You had kept their offense off the field. You had established who you were, and so I just don't love it. I would have kicked it, tied the game, and then go won it in overtime. Or if I'm at the 1 yard line, I'm running that thing to go get in. So, but back to the original question of the Colts, I think they got to find a run, and they got to find a healthy consistency. Their issue is they're up and down. You're dressing 30 guys 1 week. You know what I mean? That stuff. We have to stay efficient and healthy and learn and grow as a team together if they really want a shot at it. Because otherwise, you and I, we all know it won't be enough as the season moves on if you can't keep the same guys in the lineup.
Jeff, yes, it was the Bills yesterday, and they are one of the worst offenses really the NFL has seen in quite some time. But how much did the Colts just needed that style of win to where you eased yourself into the game, you got an early lead, and then when you needed to put a team away, you did that late half and gave Buffalo no hope. Really, once you went into to halftime, that game was pretty much over at 24-0.
Oh yeah, I mean, listen, they were overscheduled. I mean, they had. Without, with a QB who's banged up, starting Anderson, then McCoy goes down. The Colts did exactly what they needed to do. I mean, when you have a team on the ropes, you got to take them out. The most impressive part was how fast they did take them out. I mean, it wasn't one of those things where, it was. As I'm watching that game, I mean, literally in the end of the first quarter, I would say you saw who the most dominant football team was. There was no answer that the Bills had for the Colts in really any area defensive. We were flying around, and our defense for whatever everybody's saying and however the national media does, this is a defense that from a personnel perspective. hasn't really been addressed, and because you couldn't have, right? You change coordinators and change philosophies. These guys are playing good, man. I mean, is it perfect? No. Is it championship football? I'm not saying it that way, but they have played really strong football and a much better brand of football than I even thought they would, in all honesty. And again, this is from a group that when you structure personnel and who's going to fit in what position in this defense, there's not a lot of fits quite yet. But, man, all these kids are playing, above board, and really just really proud of the effort that they put in yesterday.
Yeah, 5 forced turnovers yesterday, the most since 2008 for that defense.
Since 2008?
Yes, yeah, it's been quite some time. I think Jeff was obviously still a Colt back
Long
then.
decade, man.
I think I was in high school. Jeff, we talked about this a month ago. I know hindsight is 20/20, but if you look back on that Colts-Texans game and Frank Reich's decision to go for it on 4th and 4, and now all of a sudden the Texans have won 4 straight, including that game. And now the Colts are 2 games back in the AFC South and have lost the early tiebreaker to Houston. Does that make you rethink anything that Frank Reich did on that Sunday afternoon, or is it just kind of foolish to even go down that road a month later?
I don't think it's healthy to go down there. There's some things you just leave in the past, man, and let it die. There's nothing you can do about it again. They came up and he addressed it right away. He said he'll do it, and continue to do it. And I think you got to ride with your coach, man. He's gonna develop a culture in that locker room, and that's what he's going to get done.
Jeff, you were part of some pretty scary offenses during your time with Peyton Manning. Teams that could just go up and down the field almost at will. What are you seeing when you watch the Rams and the Chiefs right now? Holy
mackerel, man. I mean, it is. These things are just they are well-oiled machines. And as you watch, I'm not really sure the answer for defenses quite yet. There's going to be – at some point, teams are going to have to rush 3 and drop 8 and force the quarterback to either beat you with his legs and take smaller shots. Something's going to have to give. I mean, they're going to have to do something to adjust. And I'll say this: the game has completely changed, right? The way the game is refereed, the way the game is officiated is so different. Back in the day, if a guy comes across the middle, that linebacker is going to try to take him out so that he can't get that over route that they consistently hit nowadays. And again, I'm all about protecting players, so I'm not complaining. I'm just saying it is a different game. You can't touch the quarterbacks in the pocket barely anymore. So those guys are much, much braver to stay in that and hold on to that ball that split second longer to get the ball out. And so from a defensive perspective, it's much harder, man. And when you have 4 or 5 guys on an offense that can stretch it and score it, running back, receiver, tight end, and possibly another receiver, I mean, you can't cover enough. I mean, there's not enough guys on your defense to match up, man for man to be able to stop guys. And you're seeing, and they're calling great football games. And I enjoy the heck out of it, man. Listen, I'm all about. I'd much rather watch that than 9-6. So I'm all about it as an offensive guy. I got no complaint.
And by the way, the Patriots have now scored at least 38 points in a game, 4 games in a row. They're only the 5th team since 1970 to do that. So despite the early season troubles, I think Bill Belichick and Tom Brady have figured it out.
There is no doubt. I don't think anybody questioned what they would end up, doing. Again, that's always a different team. Week 1 and Week 17, I can assure you, the New England Patriots will be a different-looking team. And like you said, they have found their rhythm, and that's without Gronk. I mean, it's without Edelman. It's without. I mean, you just keep naming it's without. And other than Brady being in there, every week is a different group, and for whatever reason, they can always find a way to overcome those hindrances.
Jeff, last one from us. Week 8 of the NFL is upon us this week. Your biggest surprise, good or bad, through the first half of the 2018 season?
Jaguars are my biggest surprise. I'll be surprised, especially benching Bortles, if they don't try to find a quarterback in a trade. I mean, he has. You saw Doug Marrone. He almost lost it on the post-game interview about turnovers. and you can tell whether he's throwing turnovers, whether he's not protecting it in the pocket. I'm going to be shocked if they don't at least try to go find somebody. I mean, you can't keep those type of defenses together for long. They all know that it's on that edge. We saw what happened in Seattle. You only get so many shots. Fournette's already banged up, who was 50% of your offense last year, and now he can't get on the field. You trade for Hyde to try to help yourself. That quarterback position, we're seeing it in the league, how important it is. It's one of those, I'll be surprised if they don't try to do something to jumpstart their season.
Okay, Jeff, I actually lied. One quick more. If you were Chris Ballard, would you offer Jacoby Brissett to the Jaguars, or intra-division, there's no way you would even think about that?
No way. I'm not giving in nobody in my division. I'm not giving them that good a quarterback. That'll come back to bite you, man. No way.
Hey, come on, Nathan Peterman's probably available.
Keep that horseshoe on that helmet, baby. We're all about
That's right.
that. Don't be giving that guy away.
Hey, by the way, congratulations, Coach Saturday, because I understand another victory. And your coaching career just continues to flourish right now over at Hebron Christian Academy, and you get the opportunity now to play the number one team in the state in the playoffs next week, right?
Well, not playoff. In the last game for us, but they're number one. It's going to be a tough one. But, yeah, big win for us, 17-7 last Friday night. So beat a very good football team, and so happy about the way it's going. Now we'll really see what we're about. We might not have that same congratulations next Monday, but I'm hoping for it.
We'll talk to you soon.
All right, y'all be good.